Excellent. It hasn't been letting me record to the cloud, and it is working. That helps it get up on our YouTube channel. The replays, by the way, are found on the YouTube channel. I'll be referencing some past sessions today, but we do take questions during the session. So go ahead, post those into the chat. We'll work them in as best we can. If it's a question that is just totally off topic and doesn't work very well into the presentation, we do Q&A at the end. So don't feel like you are limited to questions on the topic at hand. If you have a question on homeschool scheduling or homeschool math, Montessori parenting. Really, the possibilities are endless. Um, if Larry Schiller was on the session, I would say questions about becoming a pilot or playing the violin. I'm not quite the person to field those, but Amanda and I will be able to field pretty much all of your homeschool questions. I'm Antoinette LaGrossa. I've been homeschooling for more than 2 decades, which is a scary thought. It goes so incredibly fast. And I've homeschooled my five from the beginning, and Amanda has been homeschooling. Oh, Amanda, I am so sorry. Is uh, AR 6 or 7? 7. Okay, that's what I thought. Um, and Amanda has been homeschooling her 7. Amanda did lose her voice, so she will be helping us out in chat also. So between the two of us, I do feel that we're going to be able to field pretty much any homeschool questions on any topic. So feel free to just pop those into the chat. It looks like it is officially time, so we will go ahead and excuse me, get started with today's topic, which is one that I absolutely love, and that's helping your children to fall in love with reading, writing, and grammar using Montessori tools and techniques. Montessori homeschooling, if you are new to it, the Montessori method is a wonderfully natural fit for homeschooling because it is all about nurturing the whole child, not just academically, but physically, emotionally, academically, meeting them where they're at, and then giving them the multisensory tools, the interaction, the freedom, the space to get to that next level and do so in a way that is very respectful of the child, which encourages them to not just become good citizens of your family, which is wonderful and beautiful, but ultimately good citizens of the world and helping to make the world a better place. To help you in that endeavor, there is a freebie for you that we have. This homeschool freebie bundle is over 200 pages of goodies. We're going to send the link for this out to the um, the conference email list. If you're watching the replay, you can find this by simply going to schillerlearning.com. There is a tab that you're going to want to explore. That's the Homeschool Freebies tab. Underneath the Homeschool Freebies tab, there is a button for the Homeschool Freebie Bundle. So in addition to the parent and student planners, this also has scores of sample Montessori-based activities for both math and language arts. Now, of course, today we are talking about language arts. But why Montessori? Well, that is because it is very developmentally appropriate, and we're going to create a nurturing environment for our kids. Doing Montessori at home, by the way, does not have to look like doing Montessori in a classroom. Montessori classrooms are beautiful. I've had the pleasure of observing the Schiller Learning Math curriculum being used in a Montessori classroom with multiple age kids, different groups of kids doing different activities at the same time. Very neat to observe. The Montessori space is beautiful. You do not have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on Montessori materials to begin incorporating the techniques into your homeschooling. Um, you may have seen the daily homeschool coach email for today from the Rising Stars Foundation. And that was, driving home the point of don't stress about doing Montessori at home. It doesn't have to look like this classroom. You don't have to be getting everything out of the big Montessori catalogs and spending those tens of thousands of dollars. But there are some things about the Montessori classroom that are going to be beneficial for you to replicate in the home. One of them is not over decorating the homeschool walls. Oh, we do have some things, by the way, some activities in the student planner that are found in that homeschool freebie bundle that you'll be able to decorate your walls with. One is a Montessori quote page. It's a printable for the kids to decorate and hang up. Another is a student goal tree, helping them to narrow down what their goals are for the school year and put that in a place that they're going to be able to see and be inspired by. So we have a couple of ideas in addition to a simple map that you'll be able to decorate your homeschool with. But the open shelving, the bright, airy, lots of sunlight, plants, bringing in elements of nature whenever possible. So just some overall homeschooling tips. You'll find more of those in other sessions and in those homeschool planners, by the way. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to start off with is a reminder about reading to your child every day. Reading to your child is truly one of the best things that you can do. You can start this at birth. And that is something that I had done with my kids. And I have to tell you, by the time my son, my oldest, was one, he was reciting entire books. Now, this made me think he was actually reading at one, but that's okay if they're able to recite books from memory. And that is one of the things that makes um, reading to your child on a regular basis such a beneficial thing for them, because one of the things that does is that it is going to give them a very rich, wide vocabulary. And one of the things that gives your child a leg up when they are learning to read is having that large vocabulary, so that when they're exposed to a word that they are trying to decode, it's a word that they've already heard. Kids have a much easier time decoding words that they have been exposed to through speech. And reading is a wonderful way of making sure that your child is being exposed to a wider variety of vocabulary than what you use in speech on a daily basis. These, by the way, are the 5 pieces of assigned literature that are in our language arts kit B. Now, the assigned literature that is in language arts kit A is a book of Mother Goose rhymes. And there is something unique about that book. And sometimes when we are exhibiting at convention and people pick up the Mother Book of Mother Goose Rhymes and they kind of start to flip through it, they'll start flipping as though they're looking for something. And it's generally illustrations. And that book is entirely not illustrated. You're not going to find a single picture in there. While picture books are beautiful, you probably have some wonderful picture books for your kids. It's also crucially important to include reading selections that don't have pictures so that your child, whether it's when you're reading to them before they become that emergent reader, or when they are beginning to decode, that either they're listening to you read and without any of the details being filled in with pictures, they're listening to the words and taking those words and creating a mind picture. That is actually going to help them later on when they're trying to take a mind picture that they have and put it into words. So, in addition to all of the beautiful picture books, be sure that you include reading selections that are not illustrated. That's going to make sure that your child's number one listening skills are working a little bit better because they're not going to start daydreaming and then just looking back at those pictures to fill in the details. And then, it's going to help actually with their comprehension because they'll be paying close attention to those details and creating those mind pictures. Now, the five pieces of assigned literature in our Language Arts Kit B, you might notice that they're older reading selections. Generally, not only do we all have beautiful picture books, for our kids, we generally have a lot of contemporary children's literature. We've selected uh, pieces of older literature as the assigned. We still want kids to make additional reading selections of their interest. Um, but we want some older reading selections because they generally have richer vocabulary than the contemporary reading selections. So definitely thought has gone into the assigned pieces of literature in both that Language Arts Kit A for pre-K kindergarten and Language Arts Kit B for first through fourth grades in that Schiller Learning Language Arts. But the important point to drive home is to read to your child every day, right from the beginning, because it is also going to help them learn how a book works. It's really sad when you see teachers, early childhood teachers, talking about how they get kids coming into their classroom who've never had a book read to them. So they don't know that books work from front to back or how to turn the pages with care. They don't know that reading starts at the upper left hand corner of the page and going across. So it's also beneficial to your child when you begin reading to them that you're pointing and running your finger along that text, going to help train that proper eye tracking. Of course, there are lots of Montessori materials that will also do that. Uh, Now, so you're reading to your child on a daily basis and getting ready to get into um, more formal learning activities. You want to, begin planting those seeds for loving learning when they are in preschool. And one of the ways to do that is to make it multi-sensory. That is one of the many reasons that Montessori has shown in repeated studies to be a more effective method than any other. And that is because it is multisensory. It's using all of the learning styles, the visual, tactile, auditory, kinesthetic, and it's incorporating those in a way that are meaningful, not just sometimes you'll see activities in a curriculum that are multisensory, but it's almost like multisensory busy work. All of the activities in Montessori are very deliberate and have layers of benefit. Okay, one of the basic Montessori materials for um, both phonics and spelling. So, this is one of those things you're going to be using when teaching your child to read, introducing the letter sounds. Um, by the way, introducing the letter sound prior to the letter name is going to help to prevent some common reading struggles. And sometimes when you see those beginner readers, they're throwing in letter names along with the sounds as they're decoding. And that is because that was the initial impression in their brain, and then it has to be retrained. By simply introducing the sound first, you can uh, prevent some of those. Now, we have an entire session coming up tomorrow, Wednesday, the 31st at noon Eastern. So that would be 11 Central, 10 Mountain, 9 Pacific time. If you're in this session, you're going to be getting a link to that one, but we're going to take a look at, how to present the material, all of the different things that you can do with it. Just know that the movable alphabet is one of the things that kids absolutely love. They become essentially building blocks for words, whether it is phonics or spelling that you're working on. Kids love to use them. It will help your child to love language art. And even the movable alphabet is one of those Montessori materials that it's fun to, once you've done the assigned purpose for your activity, for your lesson with a material or a science kit, that you give your child a period of time for free exploration with that. Whether it's, if you've been using a magnifying glass in a science activity, maybe they go on a treasure hunt through the yard or even through the house to look at things up close with that magnifying glass. If it's movable alphabet, they can use that to create pictures in addition to just, experimenting with what words and phrases they can make with it. So giving that period of uninterrupted, just free exploration time helps to keep that passion of learning for your child. Now, kids, when they're really young, tend to be so thirsty for knowledge and new things, new activities. And then unintentionally, we can dull that passion for learning through either things that are not meaningful or things that aren't developmentally appropriate, maybe having our preschool child sitting and doing a lot of worksheets, which for most kids is not developmentally appropriate. With Montessori, this is a picture of Language Arts Kit A. All of those materials are going to keep your child interested. Now, one of the wonderful Montessori quotes is to do not tell them how to do it, show them. Show them how to do it and do not say a word. So, whenever possible, you want to demonstrate things. And the reason for this is that when you tell them, they watch your lips. Whereas when you show them, they're going to watch what you're doing and want to do it for themselves. Okay. Um, Now, one of the ways that you can implement that in your homeschooling, something that no matter what curriculum you're using, you can use. And this is something that can be added to not just your language arts, but your math, your history, your science, and that is a tracing tray. Montessori uses sand. You can swap out quinoa for this sand and save yourself the sand cleanup. The Montessori method is tough to improve on, but Larry Schiller did something brilliant, and that was swapping out the sand for the quinoa. Oh, okay, that's those allergies rearing their ugly head. Pair quinoa with a shallow tray, whether it's the tray lid to Movable Alphabet or it's a shallow baking sheet that has that little bit of a lip on it, like a jelly roll pan. You just want enough quinoa to cover the bottom. And then students engage in sensory tracing, whether it's when they're learning letter sounds, you can first show them how to trace that letter in the quinoa. Now, when they are tracing, recommend having them do a two-finger trace. Doing that two-finger trace is going to help that position feel just very natural and second nature to the child. Uh, and that's ideal when they are first learning the letters because it's not going to be a lot of fine detail tracing. Of course, at free exploration, they can do that single finger and make beautiful artistic creations with that quinoa. But the two finger, when we put a pencil in their hand, then it's just adding the thumb, and you've got that wonderful tripod pencil grip. So by having them do that two-finger trace with the quinoa, it is helping to avoid that claw death. And that pencil grip is important because if your child has that really tight pencil grip, it's not going to be, writing will not be a pleasant experience for your child. Okay, when they are learning the letter sounds, the letter names, you can also, another material you probably have at home is Play-Doh. Play-Doh is something that is actually used in occupational therapy for a number of reasons. It strengthens hand-eye coordination. It improves the hand muscle tone, strengthening arches of the hands. It's developing both gross as well as fine motor skills and the precision of grasp when they are rolling that out, making a rope. And that is, by the way, how you would begin is to take a little wad of Play-Doh and again, show the child instead of explaining step by step for what you want them to do. And you can give, very limited verbal instruction. And that's something that you see in the Schiller Learning script is it's more walking you through how to present all of these things to the child with just some limited verbal instruction. It is not, and which also means it's easier um, to use because the script is very conducive to just being open and go. You don't have to do lesson preparation, reading through all of that in advance. You can just open it up. It'll tell you what to do, what to say is in quotes. So it makes it really easy for implementing Montessori into the home. Now, take that little bit of Play-Doh, roll it into a ball, and then roll that out into a rope. They can roll it out on the table, roll the rope out into their hands, either one. But all of that is going to be crossing the midline, which promotes bilateral communication, the hemispheres of the brain. So this is a wonderful developmentally appropriate activity for young kids, or older kids are going to benefit from this as well. Instead of rolling out letters, they can roll out spelling words or, science or math formulas. Okay. One of the other materials that will absolutely have your child love language arts is the metal insets. They will use these in a number of ways. On the next slide here, uh, there will be a progression of activities that the kids can do. But on the screen there, you'll see they can, just like with the other materials, do open-ended exploration and creation. So even beyond your child using these as a handwriting manipulative, that's going to give them that pencil control, helping them to learn proper pencil pressure, not just pencil position, which they will also be working on that, proper tripod pencil grip with the insets, but it's also going to help them gauge the pressure, how much they are pressing with that pencil. So kids like to use these for art activities well beyond the preschool, kindergarten level in early education. So this is one of those materials kids tend to pull out over and over again, and they will just, it helps them to love learning. Okay, so they will use these. They can use them with a plain pencil, colored pencils. They can use them with crayons. The pencil does hold an advantage over the crayon simply because when they're using a pencil in these activities, it's helping them to gauge the proper pressure. So the first thing that they're going to do, and just to take another peek back, the insets, each part has two pieces. So you've got that pink frame along with the blue inset, which is knobbed. And those knobs, when the kids are using those, encouraging them to pick those or any of your knobbed pencils up, not with a full-handed claw, but again, the three fingers that they're going to use for their pencil grip. So all of the knobbed puzzles that you have in your home, when you're using it with the three fingers, it's helping to develop the pencil grip muscles as well as the control in those three fingers that they're going to use for writing later on. So remember that when your child is working with their puzzles as well. Okay, so in the beginning, they can simply use them for matching. You can introduce them with the 3-period lessons so they can learn the vocabulary of what each of those shapes is. Then they can trace either the inset or the frame. And you can do this on either full paper or cut or tear paper to the size of the inset. Now, I know some people had missed the last week's session on helping your child to develop beautiful handwriting. There was an issue with the recording of that. So this information is really helpful for that, both the quinoa, the Play-Doh, and then this progression in using the insets. So first, they are tracing just the frame, and you can have them do a double trace. And, you know, if they are tracing the inset, tracing around that, then have them use the frame and have them trace inside, trying not to go over that outside line so that they're creating that double outline. It looks really nice, invites attention to detail and more precision in their work. From there, they can then go ahead and trace some parallel lines. And in the beginning, wide parallel lines, because of course they are easier. Now, in this first one pictured here, you'll see where each line is separate. So the student has picked up the pencil at the end of the line and gone to the next. They can also do a continuous line. They can do horizontal lines. They can do vertical lines. They can do vertical lines the other direction. So practicing different types of lines, and the curriculum does walk you through the different types of lines to do with that. But through the shapes of all of the different, there are 10 different shapes in the set of insets. And you'll see that there are different slants, different kind of curves between the shapes of the insets themselves, along with the different tracing activities that they're doing. This material actually has your child practicing every single stroke for all 26 letters of the alphabet, but having a ball doing it. Then they can do some closer together lines, some shading. The shading activities, this is where they start getting creative in an artsy way. It also is helping them master the pencil pressure. So if you have a child who is pressing way too hard when they're writing and it's really tiring their hand out quickly, breaking pencil points, making everyone miserable because now, 60 seconds into an activity, your child's hand hurts. Shading activities with the insets will definitely, help them master that art of pencil pressure. So that's, tracing with a single shape. Then we can get into combining shapes. Uh, at first, combining two without overlapping, then you can get into overlapping, and more than two shapes. The repeated tracing, this is one of my personal favorite things with that. If you grew up with spirograph, there are endless creations that they can do with the Montessori insets, but they're responsible for that repetition and that control. So it's helping them really develop that attention to detail and precision in both their pencil use as well as hand position, holding the paper, holding the pencil. And the creative possibilities are truly endless for what your child can do with the insets. Okay, so that is, you know, looking at reading, uh, starting that with both reading to your child as well as the movable alphabet, then transitioning them into a bit of the work, the activities to get them putting things to paper. Then we're going to start doing multisensory exploration of grammar. This is going to start as an extension to reading to your child. Just like once they actually start writing, all of those skills can really blossom out of natural conversation stemming from when you're reading to your child. So again, that reading to your child every day is so important because it's going to branch into many different areas. So you can talk about parts of speech as you are reading excerpts from your literature. You want to introduce the part of speech not with written word, but like, for example, showing them, nouns, people, places, things, showing them nouns in their environment, and then telling them, what a noun is. Then practice identifying that part of speech in your child's environment so that they are then maybe going on a noun scavenger hunt and finding those. Or if you're talking about adverbs, well, finding the noun and then identifying an adverb that describes that. So if you've got a red sofa, they can go and say, red. This sofa is red. That is, excuse me, adjective. I don't know if I said adverb just a moment ago. Acting out verbs. That is one of the things in the chiller learning curriculum that we do when we start talking about verbs and that they are action words or states of being. We're acting those out in a very dramatic, fun way, and then having the child do that same thing. So, right off the bat, grammar is not dry and tedious the way that we were introduced to grammar. Music can also reinforce grammar like other areas of learning, and the Chiller Learning Language Arts curriculum does include grammar songs for parts of speech, subjects, predicates, and more. Again, just bringing us back to that point about reading to your child on a regular basis. One of the other things about the older pieces of literature, not only do they have richer vocabulary, they've got more complicated grammar. So those are wonderful texts to use in practicing grammar. But no matter what your child is reading, it is beneficial for their grammar work to pull out a passage, especially when it is a topic that your child loves and they have selected a piece of literature because it's something that they're interested in. It's something they're passionate about. It has a character that they absolutely love. We can pull a passage out from there and say, okay, let's find all of the nouns in this passage or all of the prepositions and then acting those out. Okay. Um, and then just the way that we can use that literature, and we're going to take a look at a manipulative that we can use for that. The literature being a launching point for grammar, the literature is also a launching point for writing skills. And the writing skills, your child's storytelling skills, start with retelling of a story. Uh, and just like when you're using a manipulative, instead of explaining in depth what you're going to do or what you want your child to do, you can demonstrate it. So, at the end of reading a story, you can retell that short story. Maybe it's, an excerpt of a Peter Rabbit story for your preschooler, kindergarten, or early elementary child. And then demonstrate retelling that to your child in your own words and having them ask you questions about the story as you retell it. And then having the child retell stories that you read to them in their own words. This is going to let you know that your child indeed has been listening to what you've been reading, that they've been processing. It's going to identify areas for vocabulary growth because maybe your child heard a new vocabulary word in a story that you have read to them, and it looked like they got it. But in that retelling of the story, you realize, oh gosh, they got that meaning from the context clues. They got that meaning wrong. It gives you an opportunity to correct that and be very excited about learning new vocabulary words. And then you can start to ask them questions. How might the story have been different? Um, how might you have ended the story differently? How might you have behaved if you were in that character's position? What elements about that character did you really enjoy? Or, who was your favorite character and why? What was it about them that you liked? So, the questions, the conversation that you have from reading, but make it very casual, make it very comfortable so that it feels like natural conversation as opposed to you reading off of a worksheet. And then those questions can be essentially become writing prompts that your child is responding to in just a verbal way. And just like when your child is actually learning to write as far as putting pencil to paper, frequency with this type of conversation is also important. And starting these off verbally, but then transitioning into written words. And one of the ways to do this, we've talked about this before, is with journaling. Nature Montessori stresses the importance of your child's connection to nature. It's good for emotional and physical development, um, good for sleep cycles, hormones. There's a lot of reasons for that, but it also gets them used to on a regular basis putting crayons or colored pencils or whatever their favorite medium is to paper. And then as they begin to learn to read and spell words, because of course with Montessori, the spelling is done a lot earlier, they're going to be excited to add words to those, and it'll be a very natural transition into writing. So start off with that oral storytelling, then dictation, where you're putting your child's words to paper. Then, you know, as they have gotten into the habit of journaling with their nature journals, they're going to be able to um, add words to those. Now, when you are doing writing prompts, whether it's oral storytelling or writing, one of the things you can use is pictures. And you can show your child a picture and ask them to tell you about it. So that is something fun that you can do. You can use beautiful pieces of artwork. You can use just any picture that you are coming across on the internet that you might find of interest or that you think is going to be, about a topic that interests your child. Schiller Learning also has circle time posters for some of those early academic topics. You can use the pictures on those as either storytelling or writing prompts as well. So the circle time posters can serve as, launching points for conversation in a number of ways and even as writing prompts. Okay, so we had started talking about the literature because of grammar, and we are going to go back into looking at grammar a little bit more. This is another Montessori quote, and Maria Montessori very wisely observed that what the hand does, the mind remembers. A beautiful illustration of that. Oh, and by the way, this is one of the things that you can do with your movable alphabet is to spell out inspirational quotes. So if you're doing um, one of the things that I love in the planner that I use is inspirational quotes. And with your planner download, there are inspirational quotes included in there. And then there's a page for you to record additional quotes that you find inspirational and can refer back to, as needed. But you can take those quotes and practice phrases, sentences with your child with the movable alphabet. And so they're being inspired as they're working on those skills with the movable alphabet. So that can be fun. You can take a picture of those and decorate a notebook or a journal with them as well. Okay, so what the hand does, the mind remembers. Go ahead and take a look at the Montessori grammar symbols. This is one of those things that no matter, what curriculum you're using is a wonderful addition. And the grammar symbols are used in the Schiller Learning Language Arts Kit B for first through fourth grades. Grammar is introduced in that multisensory way in the beginning of that kit, but it is also introduced in that multisensory way even earlier in that language arts kit A, the first 2 years of language arts. Now, the study of grammar is to language what the study of anatomy is to science. And in studying grammar, we become better consumers of language and better writers too. Uh, Now, many of us probably learned grammar the same way, which was kind of dry and boring, disconnected from other things. Like grammar was literally all by itself. But the Montessori method, you can make grammar a part of the literature that your child is reading. One of the ways is to take sentences out of that literature and then identify parts of speech with the grammar symbol. Now, on the screen here is the Montessori grammar box, and you'll see that there are 9 shapes. Each of those shapes represents a different part of speech. So the black triangle is the noun, the red circle is the verb, then all of your noun related parts of speech are other forms of triangles. So you've got your pronoun, your adjective, your article, all forms of triangles. The shape helps to reinforce how they are interrelated. Adverb is that smaller, slightly different color. Conjunction is like a literal link. The preposition is like a bridge. So the preposition is going to be bridging words together. And then your interjection is a combination of your noun and verb symbols because those are going to be, the interjection can be used as either of those in a sentence. And then students start off in Montessori, it always very starts with a simple step and then increases very gracefully in level of complexity and then gracefully transitioning from very concrete to more abstract, ultimately just working abstractly. And so students start off just identifying nouns in a sentence. So they're going to just place the black triangles, working up to eventually identifying all 9 parts of speech in sentences. We do have sentences in the Schiller Learning Language Arts books, but again, these can be paired with sentence strips or just sheets of plain paper that your child copies some sentences out of whatever they are reading. And then again, those symbols reinforce the relationships for the words. And so here you can see that they are grouped by noun, pronoun, article, adjective, article. Article is the smallest of the grammar symbols. It is the smallest of the parts of speech. Then noun, verb, adverb, preposition, conjunction, and interjection. And you can see here how the grammar patterns will emerge and your child will be able to spot those grammar patterns and more easily replicate those good grammar patterns in their own writing. And then, of course, whenever we're making something hands-on, it's more engaging for the child. And with that, it is another one of those things that we are able to show, not just tell the child. Okay, let's talk more about composition and writing, creating those storytelling skills. So we talked a bit about the verbal storytelling and how to very holistically develop those storytelling skills as an extension of the bonding time that you have when you're reading to your child. Uh, excuse me. And then that is going to transition into putting things on paper. And one of the ways that you can do that and create excitement about writing is when you are acting out stories and retelling details, is to show yourself having the emotions of the characters, whether you're thrilled, afraid, or enraged, really demonstrate those emotions so that your child can see them. Because number one, it's more fun. Number two, they can start to notice details and be able to describe what those emotions look like. And then you can ask them to tell you stories about a time when they were one of those emotions. And so that's one of the ways that we can transition our child into writing. And then as we transition the child more into putting things on paper, we want them to become conscious of things like elements of good stories and being aware that when we introduce rhyme or vivid description, suspense, leaving those gaps, not filling in all the details right off the bat. Um, this is something that I particularly love because I have a passion for nickel knowledge. Interesting little known facts. Those add a lot of interest to stories and being sure that they're including that beginning, middle, and end, and that there is power to developing good writing because when you tell a story well, good things are going to happen. People will feel entertained. People will feel more knowledgeable, more powerful, and you will be able to affect change in the world if you are able to write well. One of the models that we use for helping kids to visualize parts of a story and being able to develop those good storytelling skills is the story mountain. Um, and that's going to help them to see that, okay, we are building up, we're filling in details, we're helping the reader to see the path. The peak is that most exciting part of the story. And then it can't just end. You can't just jump off that cliff. We need to bring them back down and then bring them to that resolution that is uh, that new base camp that they are getting to. So the Story Mountain, a wonderful illustration of pieces of a good story that can be found in the Language Arts Kit B. Also in Language Arts Kit B, there are guides for book reports. And so each of the 4 books in there asks for increasingly complex literary analysis. And so when they're in book 5, which is the first book in there, it's just these questions here on the left. And then as they get into the higher books, there's more questions. The font gets smaller because there's more information, and it goes from just a single page to then they're pulling out 2 pages of information. And, oh, excuse me, and telling their reader um, about that much information, doing that much literary analysis. And so it just gives a good guide, a good structure that your child can use as a base. They can certainly do more than that, but it's helping them to get the essentials into their literary analysis. And then, of course, just creative writing prompts can be a lot of fun. And as your child is transitioning into daily journaling where they're not just doing pictures or labels or phrases, transitioning them into journaling where they're doing sentences and paragraphs is to ask them questions. And this can be part of your daily journaling activity. Uh, these are some writing prompts. Everyone loves to talk about themselves. So that's one of the things, a great starting point working with your child is asking them questions about themselves. What's your earliest memory? And remind them to include details, like every detail they can remember. This is something that I really like. You think you will never forget details of events, letting your child know that journaling, writing diaries, writing, notes about events that they enjoy and think they'll never forget. Because someday, and it's not necessarily when they're 80, but when they're 25, they may replace the details of what seems like a super important event when they're 6 with details of other things. And so it's nice to be able to go back and look at that writing, even if they think they'll remember it forever. Because I'm sure you've all had things that you think you'll remember every detail of forever, but then later on you realize, I'm losing little bits and pieces of that. Okay, and that's because your mind has determined there are more important things to store. Now, if you had the power to change one thing about the world, what would you change and why? This is a neat question to include every single year and see that change that's happening in your child's interests and your child's priorities over the years. Describe your best friend and 5 reasons that they are special to you. Um, that can lead into wonderful conversations about the things that they value in their friends and how to be a good friend themselves, so that we're working, you know, starting with natural conversation, transitioning into writing, but also using that their writing to have meaningful conversation in another way. And having that fluidity between reading, writing, and conversation is going to be relationship building with your child. And it'll also help you to see what you can do to make your homeschooling more fun and more effective. Okay, what's something you would like to invent? What problem does it solve? Who does it help? Whose life does it change? I like these questions because students who homeschool are statistically more likely to become entrepreneurs. So it helps them to become mindful of that. What's the funniest thing you've experienced? What kid doesn't like to tell that story? And this is one of those in particular that helps you tweak your homeschooling is what would your perfect homeschool day look like? These are some writing prompts. We actually have an entire um, Tuesday at 2 session on the Chiller Learning YouTube channel that takes you into more writing prompts beyond this, but looking at helping your child to become a writer. And then in writing, editing and self analysis is such an important part of that. Editing for the technical aspect, absolutely. There's a fun game that can help you with that. Um, it's called Go to Press. It's by Learning Resources. Unfortunately, they actually stopped making it, but you can find it sometimes in online yard sales or actual yard sales. But Go to Press, that is something my kids, they've all enjoyed doing that. And it helped them in their proofreading skills in an amazing way. And it's just another fun way of making sure that grammar is not dry. So that technical aspect, your grammar symbols, and having done all of that grammar analysis and practice, that's going to help them in their editing process. Oh, and the grammar symbols, by the way, they can use those in looking at their own writing as well. But then self-analysis that can happen in conversation. Asking them to reflect on the story and how it could be improved. And if they were to tell that story again, would they do anything differently? Why they chose the things that they chose, the characteristics or the actions, the mindset for their character, and what they think of their work. We ultimately want our child to take ownership of their education and be the drivers of that. Okay, so that is going to wrap up the session for today. I think that you'll find incorporating these things into your language arts will help your child to um, love learning language arts, all aspects of being able to communicate well, whether that is spoken word, written word, something they're reading, something that they are writing, or something that they are telling others about, and be able to interact with and then influence the world around them in a very positive way. And those basic language arts skills are crucial not just for language arts, but for being an effective learner in history, in science, in so many ways, as well as just living life. So we want them to love that, and then we want them to become drivers of that education. Did anyone have any questions that we did not get to in during the session? It does look like we got to all of those. Okay, excellent. And then if you do have any questions about any of the Schiller Learning Language Arts, just reach out on the website, the toll-free number. You can reply to one of the conference emails. Tomorrow, there is a session about the movable alphabet. We'll be taking a look at all the things we can do with that. Next Wednesday is the session with Joshua Zimmerman from Brown Dog Gadgets. He is going to do a fabulous STEM workshop. You can actually order the Brown Dog Gadgets paper circuits. We do have a promo code for that. Amanda, if you're able to pop that in, that will be going out in another email. So keep an eye out in those, in the Back to Homeschool Blast emails for that Brown Dog Gadgets promo code. Paper circuits are really neat. It's a very doable early STEM project that helps to teach the basics of electronics in a very hands-on, interactive way that the child can create something that they are interested in, and they'll be proud to show, you know, their friends or family members the circuit that they were able to build. Thank you. The promo code, by the way, is Schiller Learning. So if you go to Brown Dog, and Amanda, that's good at the Brown Dog Gadgets website. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So if you go on over to Brown Dog Gadgets, you can use that. Um, and then was that for free shipping, or was that for, okay, free shipping on the arts and crafts section? Excellent. Okay, so that is going to be tomorrow's session is 12 noon. It'll be using the same link that you used for today. Next week's session is also Tuesday at 2, and then the Brown Dog Gadgets is also going to be Wednesday at noon. So I hope you have the opportunity to join us for all of that. Okay, thanks guys. It was, as always, an honor to have you here with us today. Let us know how incorporating these techniques, it is 20% off with that code. Okay, awesome. So it's 20% off. Oh, 20% off. That's nice. And the Schiller Learning kits at the Schiller Learning website, as part of the Back to Homeschool Blast, you can save either 20% or more. All of that pricing is available just in the cart. So if you have a promo code, keep an eye out. There's one going out today. or free shipping that you'd be able to pair with that. So that's nice. The Back to Homeschool Blast, we're trying to bring you good homeschool deals as well. Okay, so I hope you are able to join us for some of those next week. Thanks, guys.